Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Nerdarchist Dave, and as always, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
How are you doing this evening, brother-in-law?
Ah, I'm doing pretty good. Getting super excited for the castle. It's basically just over 3 weeks before we get on that plane and go play D&D in a castle.
Do castle things. So, I think it was your idea to talk about the seasons.
Yeah, I mean, it was you like to do these weird broad topics that have a variety of different ways that you can talk about them. When I brought it up, it's like you can talk about the weather, you can talk about changes. You made the association of you can do all kinds of stuff with the Fae and the Eladrin because they have that definitive linkage there. So there's definitely a lot that you can deal with when it comes to the seasons.
I think there's a lot more to it than that. And for anyone just joining, welcome. We're going to be talking about a variety of things, probably, but we're going to start off talking about using the seasons in your Dungeons and Dragons game. And hey, Zareth Gaming, haven't seen you in a while. Hey, comrade, how's it going? But there's a lot of great, I think, story and role playing opportunities in there. Also, it's also a way to change things up. If you've been running a certain kind of campaign, when winter hits, you can now use a whole slew of monsters, maybe that you weren't using before, because it's a hotter climb or it's a warmer climb, but the snows come in and the frost giants come down from the mountains, or Aranraz wanders into the center of the village, which are things that won't likely happen in different times of the different seasons of the year.
We just finished watching Game of Thrones, and early on it's winter's coming, winter's coming, winter's coming, and realize that even though their seasons are vastly different than the regular world, or what most people use for a fantasy setting, it denotes a change, and you can use the change of seasons, whether you're talking about a short-term thing, whether you're talking about a permanent thing, as that node of change in a game. And with that change, you can change the whole dynamic of what's going on, the whole theme. As winter is supposed to be that much harsher, you could really throw in, all right, well, it's now winter. I'm going to be a more brutal DM. I'm going to have encounters that are, that much more challenging because, winter is that state of death. So I mean, you could do a lot with that angle.
Yeah, I mean, you could run whole adventures that are based off of the seasons not turning, right? I mean, we talked about winter a little bit, but what about summer and the idea of the drought, right? And in a D&D game, in a D&D world, that can mean a lot of things. It can mean, well, it's just bad weather, or there's a summer witch someplace that is keeping the land locked in a dry state where no rain is happening, and perhaps even holding the villages or the town or the outlying farms kind of hostage.
And with that style, or with that that whole angle, is you have to look at the kind of game and equipment that are going to go along with it. Whether you're talking about a winter game or whether you're talking about a summer game, you need to have or not have certain things. If you're talking about blazing heat, that's sweat's going to be dripping off your body, and you don't have a lot of water, you are not going to be running around in heavy armor. You're going to be suffering levels of exhaustion until you just die.
So real quick, want to thank Fantasy Grounds College for the super chat.
Hey,
FGC
thank you.
loves natural obstacles, creating premature scarcity and lots of weather-related environmental exploration. Couldn't agree more. Someone also, Hal Deacon, Heat Miser, which, Nerdarchist Ryan, when he was with us, he had written adventure. It was, what is it? The Crinch That Stole Father's Winter's Day.
Yes.
Well, he had planned to, but never got around to writing up the follow up adventure that was going to be based off of the Cold Miser and the Heat Miser.
Yeah, that would have been amusing. Taurus, I'm not really sure. There's a whole lot that you can do there. He wants to know how would you handle seasons in Dark Sun. That's basically
It's freaking hot.
hotter.
It's freaking hot, and then it gets hotter. Well, that is one idea. Like, I mean, there would still be kind of seasons. Like you would have like planting seasons, but for the most part, it is always just like scorching hot because it's a desert planet. And with that too, you have the extremes of day and night with Dark Sun. You know, you have the blistering heat of the sun, but you have the freezing cold temperatures at night when the sun goes down. So you kind of get it all in one day. I also like the idea of, no matter which way you want to go with weather, of using it to herald in different types of adventure. Like we kind of mentioned and touched upon. You know, perhaps you have a volcano that becomes more active nearby, or a volcanic region that is more active in the summertime, which has nothing to do with how that really works in the real world. But in a fantasy D&D world, you could actually just tie the shifting of seasons to the alignment of the planes. So, the volcanoes get more active and hotter, not because geothermal activity, but because of where the planes happen to be. Because
Right.
instead of science, we have magic.
I mean, it could literally be tied to, if the planet revolves, maybe during that, portion of its revolution, that's when it's, closer to the elemental plane of fire, whatever. Um,
And I mean, in our own game, we kind of did things a little bit different. In Ulfgania, we actually have a polar equator where the center of the Earth is cold instead of hot, because either pole has a sun that revolves around it, as
right.
opposed to the planet revolving around the sun.
Yeah, we have a stationary planet, and it's massive. It's one of these super planets or mega planets, whatever they're called, and it's got the celestial bodies that revolve around it. I don't know what we ever really decided on, number of moons, but I know that in the initial world of Volcania, we had like 5 or 7 moons, and they all had names and what have you.
A bunch. Zareth Gaming wants to know, you think with a hard blizzard during winter, would a drow be able to use superior dark vision?
So I would say when you're talking about snow, snow really captures and bounces light. So no. Uh,
It's not even that. An actual blizzard, when the snow is coming down, there's something physically in your way. That's why you can't see, and it's the snow. you
so
know.
so it would be obscurement at that point in time.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Now you actually ran a game at one point where it was a winter land, like it was another plane, a demi plane of winter.
Yeah, going back to that whole celebrating the seasons and holidays, in the very early days of the Curse on Archdis game, I wanted to kind of do a Christmassy kind of event, but the region wasn't something that was set up for a hard winter, and there definitely was not a prevalence of let's give out magic items. So I did what I did for a lot of that first part of the game, where you were going to go to a demi plane in order to bring magic items back into the world. And I think you guys went into a snow globe somehow.
Yeah, that was the portal too, with the winter realm. Chris Hasnick, seasons can make areas impassable. High alpine mountain passes close in the winter. Roads through swamps disappear in monsoon seasons. All those are excellent points as well. And they're also good ways to further kind of tie your players and their characters into the world and make it a little bit more living and breathing, especially if they're visitors in a strange land in a different place that has a different climate than they're used to.
Or it's another way for you to pass along information, via note card or whisper, or Facebook message, whatever. That hey, your character knows that you're going to be setting off on a journey, and you would be going this way, but you can't because this time of year, that road or that path is impassable.
So and you could also play with that too, like with the idea of having those things um, last unnaturally long. I
Right.
also like that idea. Like, so they have to solve a problem because if it passes or routes stay blocked for too long, they're probably vital unless it's a self-sustained community that has everything it needs. You know, those stoppages of travelers and goods, it becomes a real problem. So like right there, that could be an adventure. Why are the passes still impassable? Why is winter still going on? Is it natural? Is it preternatural? Something supernatural going on? All these can be adventure hooks to get your players involved. And these are the kind of adventure hooks too that I find that they tend to be vested in as well. Like, you're stuck in this town and the food is running out. Like, you can choose to not, adventure and figure out what's going on, but eventually you're going to get hungry.
I mean, some people were like, well, you know what? I'm just going to go in the opposite direction. There's got to be food the other way. But, yeah, I would agree that there are a lot of times that, players will understand, hey, this is not just about, my character or the adventuring party. This is a lot of people suffering if I don't go do this. So, yeah, we're going to be the heroes and we're going to go get this figured out. So I definitely agree with that one.
Also, we'll probably get into it in a little bit, but we also have some stuff to give away. We have some winners to announce for our Hero Forge contest that ended like a week ago. But we had a special guest on last week, so we didn't do it last week. And we're going to do it this week. Yeah, I lost my own train of thought.
All right. So while you're thinking about that, I don't know if any of you out there happen to support the Norse Foundry At Mars cartography set, but I finally got mine in the mail today. So I now have all 5 dungeon packs, the deck of traps and obstacles, magic items, heroes and villains. So I've got all kinds of new props now to play with at the table. So definitely recommend if you aren't familiar with At Mars cartography, definitely look it up. It is super awesome. I don't know if Doug is in the chat, but if he is, or if some other admin happens to know where to grab the link, put it in there.
And also, Doug actually worked on that project.
Yes, he was the one of the editors.
Yes.
Or the editor.
So I know what I was thinking of. Like, anytime you introduce scarcity into the game, because magic is so abundant in 5e, there's a good possibility if the players have access to what, even first level spells, really, even a good berry, right, will do it for the players. So, but what happens if that you introduce that scarcity, but they're not having a problem, but the rest of the town is? Are angry mobs going to like show up and insist that they share what they have, and try and either get it from them or strong arm them into sharing? If they're not willing to go out and adventure and try and help the town and be heroes.
I mean, there's definitely a lot to be said there. I mean, if you offer up this rabble, I mean, individually, not a single one of them is going to be a threat to an adventurer, but enough of them, how many people are you willing to kill? How many sleep spells do you really have, before, the masses kind of, push in, and they're moving out of desperation. So they're not thinking straight. They're not thinking clearly, and they're hungry. They want to live.
So that kind of like introduces another angle of role playing if the players have to deal with the peasants revolting.
The peasants revolting as opposed to the revolting peasants.
Yeah, because they have the means that they can help people survive. So that creates a tense, possibly social encounter for you to introduce into that type of game. And that's without getting into the holidays, right? You're gonna have a planting season. You're gonna have a harvest season. Which festivals and things of that nature and holidays and holy days tend to pop up around. There's 2 solstices and equinoxes as well. So, the seasons are a great place to introduce different kinds of festivals, which, we've done it from time to time in our games. And I think it's a lot of fun. One, you can introduce different games of chance or contests into the game where the players can kind of compete against the townsfolk or other travelers or adventurers, even maybe themselves. We've even seen it used on Critical Role.
I know in my game, the one small village that I run out my kids game out of, they have a spring festival. Once everything has been planted, they've got a bunny chase, and it happens to fall around Easter for us. So it works out well to have an Easter game on that. And that's what I had wound up doing in my last game with the kids, and it of course doesn't go as planned because problems.
Chris brings up the thought of good weather game session would probably require weather obstacles, random tables, snow drifts, etc. Which, and I'm sure they probably exist online. Like you could probably find them. I don't know if Don John has that because they seem to have everything else. The Ghosts of Saltmarsh actually has a bunch of cool weather phenomena in here. Not just regular weather too, but they also have like magical weather. There's like 3 or 4 different types of magical fog. There is there's a weather. Let's see. I think I'm almost on the page. Yeah, they have they have different magical fogs, but they also have like different magical storms. They actually have like a magical storm in here for each school of magic.
Wow.
Which I found it was kind of cool. Eldritch Mist is the different fogs I was talking about: the Ghost Fog, Shadowfell Fog, Wild Magic Fog. So because we were playing in a fantasy world, we don't have to stick to just real world weather phenomena and things that can happen with the turning of the seasons. I see someone mention something about a dark carnival. Like that would be kind of cool if the dark carnival shows up at a certain time of year every year. If there's a equivalent to the Hallows Eve holiday and this carnival shows up, that could be an adventure into itself. You could definitely do something with like a fun house, and that ends up being that night's adventure.
And I mean that can be taken in a lot of different directions. Like, okay, well, you could just encounter it, and it's hazards, it's exploration, it's jump scares to see what you wind up doing. But what do you do when things go wrong? Like, oh, the people put on masks and they didn't realize that someone didn't like their last run through, and they happened to have some voodoo stuff, and they cursed all the masks. And when they're donned the next time, they're actually going to become those creatures, and it becomes a lot more than just a jump scare.
Taurus asked the question: would you guys recommend creating a fantasy calendar so you can keep a track of festivals, seasons, holidays, etc., etc.? I was thinking about doing so, but I'm unsure if I should.
Again, I go back to our last our last game that we ran in Althgania, and we had all that stuff.
Yeah.
We
At one time, we did have a full calendar with all the holidays, festivals, and different things. It depends on how much time do you have to invest in it. Is it a world that you're going to use over and over again? Do you want to do it? Because if you answer to a bunch of those yes to a bunch of those questions, then yeah, absolutely. Why not? It just gives you more tools in your toolbox, especially if you want to run a sandbox style game. Matter of fact, like we're not big on session prep, but world building stuff. If you're working in the area that your players are going to be in, most of the time that stuff's a good investment because the more you know about your world and what's going on around where the players are, the easier it will be for you to improv. Because like even if they do something you didn't expect and you didn't know and you don't know where to go, you like have all this information at your fingertips and you can just pull out a piece of that and see if they bite on it. You know, I just keep pulling out pieces until they bite on something and give you something to run with.
And then you've got all of those threads that they didn't bite on that, you still talked about them. They're still out there. They're still active in the world, and they might have to deal with those consequences later.
That is always a possibility as well. So we got a couple questions popping up. Carrie
So
Miller. I'm DMing a 5e for DMing 5e for the first time, prepping for Curse of the Strahd. Thinking about barring races with infravision, so the focus is on horror immersion in the dark. What do you guys think? I think you're gonna have way more races that you can't play than can play, because
uh, what do we
unfortunately,
what do we have? Human and we have Dragonborn. It's not a huge else other than that.
halfling. I mean, there is a few, but there's not as many. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, or maybe if you really wanted to, maybe remove dark vision from some of the races. But I would say if you're gonna do that, give them something else instead.
An easy thing is give them a skill or a tool proficiency, maybe a language. I wouldn't go beyond anything like that, and even a skill might be a lot, especially if you give them carte blanche to pick.
And
But I mean,
also infravision. Someone's dating themselves. I feel like.
well,
What
when
about ultraviolet vision?
when in the last game, Sophie had made the whole question between infravision and ultravision, and I'm like, wow, that's something I haven't heard of in a while.
Well, Sophie did write for TSR, so
No,
that would it
I'm
seems
not.
appropriate.
I'm not saying anything. I just, it was terminology that hasn't, really been heard a lot of.
Low light vision.
Well, I mean, that was what they did with third. They did low, light, and dark. Made it pretty easy. We did have another question from Talk Not Blog. You said always. You said always hiring. So can I write a book for you guys, or should I ask Wizards of the Coast?
Oh, you're thinking of Frog God Games because we had Zach on last week. So I'm sure over on the Frog God website you can find information where they do different submission things. So I would take a look over there. That one lazy guy, I believe from Australia. Question: looking back now, what personal change in perspective or opinion as a player GM of RPGs surprises you the most? That's weighty. That's weighty, heavy.
I don't know. I mean, there's not a whole lot that surprises me these days.
Well, I guess what they're asking is like, since you've been gaming, what was one of the things that maybe came out that was like that was the thing that change was a change from what you're used to, like a
Okay.
pivot.
All right. So the idea in what was it Mordenkainen's, where they essentially said that elves are able to be, I'm going to change my gender today. I think from a writer's perspective, not that I have a problem with it, but I was shocked that was something that I felt it came out of left field.
Well, I think that just harkens back to kind of like the deities themselves, and then they just extended that to the elven race as a whole. Um, you know, at this point we're looking at about 30 years of role playing games, and trying to think of like one thing that kind of is like, I didn't see that coming. It is kind of hard because I also feel like it's been kind of like a gradual shift. I think it'd be different if you gamed back in like the early 3.5 or earlier days, and then you started picking up and playing games now. But if I had to go with anything, I would have to say like the really rules light games and systems, which 5e I don't consider one of. It's rules light for D&D, but not for rules light systems. But like when I look at like Fate Accelerated and those type of games, that's something I guess it kind of has changed my perception of things a lot. And also, the more exposure to those type of games that I've gotten, the more I realize I really do like the rules lighter systems. I'm all crunched out.
I would say to a point. When I look at Fate Accelerated or No Thank You Evil, No Thank You Evil really dials down. I mean, it's designed for the ability to play with 5-year-olds, and that how Cipher has I'm an adjective, noun, who, verbs. Well, they take that and you can really dial it back to I'm a noun. You don't have to add the verb or the adjective. You can just play, and as you play, you can pick up those other things. As the players age and are able to handle more. So that's as dialed down as it can get. And I realized, like, even though I was playing with my 4-year-old when we first started playing that game, I'm like, this is too simplistic. I got to do at least 2 out of the 3.
So I will say though, the Cipher system itself is already a resource management system, which is also a big change from previous games that I've played, because there's so much more resources. And when I say resource management, I mean resource management in the sense that you kind of spend your hit points, right,
Yes.
to do things. Well, that's why No Thank You Evil works so well, is because it's a resource based system, and you get markers for young people to use so they can actually see their pile of chits depleting, and like they can understand, like kids may not understand numbers and counting, but they understand less and more.
Yes. And that was one of the things that my daughter really enjoyed. Is like, okay, I can turn one of these in and I can make this easier. And it was only a D6 that you're rolling with, so it was easy for her to really grasp. And
Well, I could also see the other way too, for different kids being like not wanting to spend them because they don't want their piles to go down or diminish.
right. So I don't know. There's definitely a lot going on with that game, but I'm a big supporter. And now G is actually like, when can I run a game? And I'm like, all right, let's break out some books and start getting into this. Son, not so much. She's curious. And I'm like, well, I don't know what this is gonna wind up doing, but I definitely start her off with No Thank You Evil before I even consider letting her do anything D&D.
Well, for one, it's actually a good place to start. But that's kind of cool that she's like, when can I run a game? So when did she ask you that?
Within the past week. Might have been over the holiday weekend.
And I don't know if you've said it during this conversation or not. How old is Jay?
7.
So 7, and she's ready to start running. Well, I think it's easy for kids in some ways, especially kids with like really big imaginations, because they're just gonna make stuff up, and and honestly, isn't that what we really do anyway?
Well, I've said many times, here on Nerdarchy, that role playing games are just a big thing of make believe with rules.
One lazy guy did reiterate there a little bit and drill down. I meant more of the mental change, as in used to not like guns in my D&D game, but now I don't care. Yes, actually, I was very much a purist early on for many, many years. Probably for the first 3 years. I would say probably like the first solid 3 years our group was together. But after DMing for so long, I just kind of started getting bored. And I one of the first things I introduced was kind of like some steampunk elements. And then, then I had, from there, we had started playing in Shattered Realm, which had like a lot of different things mixed in. There was a little bit of, it was kind of a little bit of Arcana Punk before I really knew what Arcana Punk was. And also like there was old steampunk technology that the goblins and the gnomes had that you guys had kind of started uncovering.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm still not in love with guns being in my D&D. I'd much rather them be like a magic device that's, a wand or a rod, something that's like it's powered as opposed to, more techy. But, I might get there someday, but I definitely love, more of that Eberron feel that magic is part of everyday life. And I definitely would like to have, a campaign setting that's more in that vein than what we have been playing.
Zaref Gaming has a question. How can I, as an experienced player, get more role playing out of the game I'm playing? So it doesn't really matter whether you're the player or the DM. It just may change how much of an impact you can have. But really, I would say, monkey see, monkey do, lead by example, and just role play. Now, as the DM, it's a lot easier because you can try that with different players and, interact with them via the story. As a player, you can try that with different players too, but they may not feel as compelled to role play with you if that's not their thing. Whereas the GM and you're kind of the vehicle for the story, they might have an easier time out of it. But the answer is pretty much the same. It's just by role playing more.
Turn to somebody, start talking. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about the mini terrain domain game. The mini terrain domain game, the Dawnbringers, is everyone is so heavy into the RP. Down in the description below, there's a link to I think the last 4 episodes that he hit on YouTube. He finally got them up there. But like I think the first session, it was nothing but role playing. We just kind of had some things to work out. We had just recently got some magic items, but literally it was the 4 of us having multiple conversations throughout the whole episode, as need be. The relationships wind up changing, and there's conversations to be had, and I think all of us kind of have the ability to be long-winded in that game. So yeah, it just kind of took the entire game.
That's kind of like the Jade Colossus game, where we like literally in 2.5 hour game. I think like it took us like an hour and a half, 2 hours to move 10 feet from the door to the dungeon, just because of the role playing and the annex that the players were doing. Zentron has a question, but before we get to Zentron's question, let's give away some minis.
All right, so we did a Gleam contest for the awesome people over at Hero Forge. They gave us, 3, design your own mini, and use the promo code. It's going to cost these 3 winners absolutely nothing, and they're going to get their awesome mini for free. So definitely want to, if you aren't familiar with Hero Forge, please go check them out. I've got loads of their stuff. I've been a fan of them since I came across them. So Dave's gonna read off the names. I will contact the winners and give them their free mini coupon codes.
All right, so Ben Rosen, Lonnie Mellon, and Christian Wilcoxon, all of you are going to get a mini. You get a mini, and you get a mini, and you get a mini, and that's it. We're done.
That's it. This ain't Oprah. We ain't giving them to everybody. Sorry. Fragginator's like minis.
So yes, Ted will be reaching out and emailing folks. So Zentron wants to know, what discontinued class would you love to be brought back into a new edition? Well, I mean, I don't feel like there's that many classes that we're missing, right? They're working on a Psionicist Sonic class, but that's always been tough, right? Because it's been either overpowered or some people didn't like it. I liked the way it was done in 3rd edition. Other people didn't like the way it was done in 3rd edition. Eberron introduced the Artificer, and as far as classes, I can't really even think of anything because we didn't really play Pathfinder where they have like tons and tons of different classes.
Well, I mean, I'm all on board for getting psionics back in the game. I don't feel that it does justice to put everything psionic all in one class and just have them be different subclasses. I think you could have a psionic warrior, call it something, and you've got a basically an eldritch knight type level where you combine fisticuffs or weapons, and then you can have the more wizard like psionicist. But I mean, my first character that we played, or that I played with you in a long term game, was a psionicist in second edition. I still love that character.
I
He
know
died.
you guys got all the way up to like 7th level.
So yeah, we got the seventh level before you killed everybody.
Although Steve would tell you his Necromancer of Doom never technically died.
He didn't die. I mean, he was trapped in a sepia snake sigil for 7 days. I think Ryan's character fell in lava. I got felled by acid arrow. Nate's character died from an imp sting.
And there might have been a stained glass golem involved somewhere as well, or gargoyle.
That's possible. Ryan lost a lot of characters in that campaign, so I forget which one was which. And I know after his Minotaur died, he got a Thrycreen. And I don't remember much after that with his character. But Steve's character, this Necromancer of Doom, we were 7th level and he had 15 hit points, and he was technically alive at the end of that game.
Technically. Talk Nop blog. I make a robot goblin homebrew monster for D&D 5e. Should I use it? If so, want me to list its moves. So it got funky dance moves. No, why not use it? Like if you made it and you're playing that kind of game and you want that in your game, like that's the great thing about D&D. Whatever you want in your D&D game, put it there. It can absolutely belong. So, be as weird and as crazy as you want, as long as your players are into it. Why not?
So Andy wants to know if he can be the gnome in my basement. I don't know exactly what that means, but
do you have a gnome in your basement?
I don't think so. I mean, are you gonna come and clean and organize, or possibly paint my 400 minis I just got?
Dusting, doing all the dusting. But would you really want someone to paint on your minis? Like, I just imagine if you're someone that buys unpainted minis, it's like because you want to paint them.
There's a lot of what I got. Yes, I absolutely want to paint. The adventurers, the townsfolk, hold no real interest to me unless I'm going to specifically be using that character for somebody. But you're not buying all the different add-ons for the bone stuff unless you're also going to buy the ye old basic core set, which for the price it's dirt cheap. They're like 70 cents a mini by the time the thing is over or less. But yeah, I mean, I don't have the ability to paint everything, so I would like to have some help with that.
I'm shocked. Well, I mean, you have a couple of little kids. You can start a sweatshop.
Well, I have I've been getting them to help with priming or base coating, but unfortunately the 7-year-old is eager but yet not disciplined enough to make sure the whole thing gets coated well. Teddy will, the 11-year-old, he'll do it, but he doesn't do it because there's an interest. He does it because it's like, all right, what can I get out of it? So, but it definitely does help. As I've got four primed, huge or bigger minis that are sitting on the table ready to get their base coat.
So Chris wants to know, what did you think of the 2 new Artificer subclasses that came out a few weeks ago? They came out, I read them, and I've already forgotten them. So I wasn't like, this is amazing. I don't know. I don't really like the direction they're going with the Artificer. It just isn't doing it for me. I mean, it's not terrible, and they're playable, but they don't excite me. This is what it comes down to.
I'm in the same boat. I really don't remember, much about it. There's nothing about it that's like, hey, this is amazing. I want to play this. So I get far more enjoyment out of like when we sit into a character build. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be amazing. I want to do that.
So, Taurus, how do you do years in your game? Something like 12, 14, like in real life, or 254, like in Elder Scrolls games? So we haven't really tackled that in our current game, but we used to, and I feel like we had our own like ACBC thing going on.
We did.
And I don't even remember what it was. I mean, it was also a long time ago.
It's true. Currently, we just like we're in the whatever age, ninth age, 10th age, whatever it was, and there's like each age has an undetermined number of years, and an age would end when the gods are like, nope, you guys are being naughty. I'm gonna separate you back to your rooms, and somebody gets a demi-plane.
Yeah, I mean, we did do a lot of that. I get one of the things about our games too is, and people may not realize it, they're just super casual. Like the home games that we play are super casual. We don't have a lot of time, so we don't do most of our world building has happened here on the channel for our current games. And at this point, there are more people using our stuff in their games than we are, to be honest.
Well, I mean, let's face it. We're talking about at this point in time, it's like one game a month until we can get your game back on track. Which then it's only going to be two more sessions, and that's over. And I don't know whether you're planning on picking up another game or whether you're just gonna leave it as is. There's a lot there. There has been some talks off camera about beginning to work on a whole nother campaign setting that is possibly attached to Chimes of Discordia, possibly not. Depending. Uh, there's a lot going on that it's like, all right, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, or I don't. Part of me wants to play something else too, like run something that maybe isn't D&D, or playing something that's not D&D. I don't know. Also considered maybe running a Patreon game. I don't know if any of you guys would be interested in that, as a weekly thing. I don't know. We're kicking around some different ideas. I really need to finish up my game that refuses to end. I like Ted said, there's only 2 sessions left, and I just want to get all the players together for 2 more sessions. As the folks from Cardboard Fortress are really busy because they make board games and stuff, and they're always going to conventions and stuff like that. And then there's been other personal complications throughout the group that have come up that just are beyond anyone's control. So we're just trying to figure that out. Cody Sam's kids painting minis painting minis.
Well, I mean,
I thought you'd appreciate that, Ted.
given the fact that my son almost has my name, that definitely he is a mini Ted. So,
Well, my son does have my name, but I wouldn't call him Mini at this point.
he's as tall as us, and he's definitely bulkier than I am. So he's definitely not mini.
Oh, he's bulkier than me. I think I came up behind him the one day, and I went to pick him up and scoop him, and I was like, oh my god, I think I almost give myself a hernia.
Well, that's the great part about my kids at the moment. I can still throw.
Yeah. It's like trying to pick up an anchor. So I got a question here. Talk Knob. Is Goblin good creatures? I like to create homebrew about them. I made a Goblin King, a Goblin Witchcraft, or Witchcraft, a Goblin Commander, Goblin Homebrew race kind of overpowered. Well, if that's what you like doing, do it. That's the great thing. Like, and I like the like one of the things we do a lot of times is we just mix the NPCs with, and we've got so many more of them with the different races to kind of to come up with what you want to. So if you wanted to make a tougher goblin boss, you might take the goblin boss as the base and then mash it with a veteran or a gladiator or something.
I use veteran and archmage quite a lot, and I stylize them, very differently based upon what race and whatnot that I'm mixing it with. Those are two solid gets, and I don't think any players ever realizes like, wait a second, this is just that stat block with some chain. No, it's they're in the thick of it. They have no idea what these guys are doing. But I think that's the most easy way to take a race and turn it into something else.
The first time I ran like an alien bug hunt game for 5e, and at that point I think we only had the monster manual. I took the night stats and mixed them with a ANCAG.
Oh, nice.
And then for the queen, I mixed the ANCAG with the assassin.
Oh, that's
So
uh, that's
so
a nice.
yeah, so like I mean, Ted does a lot of the same too, is where we just grab different pieces from different monsters and kind of like mix and match, and we've been known to do it on the fly as well. It's not like we're writing up like at best I will pick whichever page I'm going to use primarily and slap a post-it on it with maybe a couple of notes from the other monster that I wanted to have everything in front of me.
I have also I'm completely guilty as charged. So just be like, all right, what are you guys swinging with? All right, you got a +3 stat modifier or +3 proficiency modifier, +4 stat modifier. All right, that's a 7. All right, I'm gonna play a monster, and sevens its number. So DC is 15 plus the hit is 7, and I'll work out all the other details out as we go. And all right, let's give it X number of hit points, sure. And so, make a saving throw. Oh crap! Yeah, its stat is this. All right, did I pass? Did I not? And made something up. Never wrote it down. Like, yeah, oh well, it's done.
So, Timothy Phipps, Ted, have you or Dave played Xbox 360 games? What is that?
I have a PS3 that I haven't touched in probably 2 years. At this rate, it's basically a DVD player in my basement that occasionally my son will use to play video games. The last time I seriously played any video game was Diablo 3.
Yeah, I have a Wii and I think it's a PlayStation. I don't even know. I just use it to stream. I just use it for streaming services. My kids do stuff with them.
What's the new one that your son got?
Oh, he's got a Switch. He got the Switch.
Switch. Okay.
I don't do anything with that. I played with it like when he first got it, but like the Switch, like the controllers are tiny. And,
oh God, they're so tiny,
so little.
I'm like, how are you supposed to use this for a fighting game? It's not fair.
I'm just like button mashing with my forehead, hit all the buttons at once.
Doug says he's got a GameCube.
Is that anything like a Rubik's Cube? No.
GameCube was what came out before the Wii, so.
Yeah, we're a little. I think we're a little outdated. I don't know. You were using Skylanders for a while.
I did. My son and I played that one, and that was one of those games that is definitely bad for the wallet. I was actually very thankful when they stopped making them.
Ted's begging them, please, for the love of God, stop making these.
I'm lucky that I didn't get into Amiibo or there was several of these things, but Teddy was collecting the Lego Dimensions, which that one, thankfully those things are much smaller, so that's all in one little bin. But I mean, I've got hundreds of these, stupid Skylanders, and when I was playing that regularly, it was one of those things where I was like, well, if you get a guy, you gotta put in the time and the effort. You gotta, get all his upgrades. You got to get him to max level, and then when it came time to fight a boss, it's like, oh well, it doesn't matter if a guy dies. I've got freaking 150 dudes at level 20 that I can just drop another one on, and blah 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 blah.
So Brian Smith question: I'm meeting with a D&D buddy tomorrow to work on writing a one-shot adventure. Any tips on making a writing session successful? We haven't done like a writing jam session
In a
in
while.
years. Years. I think the most important thing to start with is like your theme, and then it's like writing any kind of story. You need a beginning, a middle, and an end, and depending on how long the session's for. So like when I think one shot, I think 3 to 4 hours, and my gauge is approximately one encounter per hour, is what I figure, whether that be exploration, social, or combat.
So that's always a good mix. When I look at, anytime you're dealing with a collaborative thing, you want to come with ideas, you want to keep an open mind, and you want to give everyone their turn. So if you're like, oh well, I'm really interested in a swamp game that is heavy exploration, light combat, light social. Okay, great. That means you're talking about a 4 hour thing, two areas to explore, one combat, one social, boom, done. Well, if you come with that and you've got, a couple ideas, lined up, and it's like, oh no, I was planning to go, completely urban, heavy social, zero exploration, one combat. Well, you guys are talking about two completely different things. So like you have to make
Urban
sure.
swamp game, man. I'm feeling it. Oh yeah. It's like
So,
Venice, but in a swamp.
so
City
like
of love. Stanky love.
so like you have to make sure that you've got the ability to be open to what the other person wants to talk about. If you're on the same page, and you've got a great theme, the rest is just doing the easy work.
I feel like with Tui's though, it's a lot easier because it's definitely easier to do like any kind of genre mash or idea mashes with just two.
Yeah, because when you enter in three or more, then it's very easy to get off track. It's very easy, to not agree on something because like, okay, well, we like this idea, but you don't, or you guys like this idea, but I don't. Two people, it's a lot easier to get on the same page.
So I'm gonna jump down here a little ways just because it's someone I don't think that has given us a question that we've responded to yet. Jared Marma, have you guys heard of the Birthright campaign or seen the Seeds of War Kickstarter? Any thoughts on strategic kingdom-based wargaming like that? Wasn't Nate in the Birthright back in the day?
I do believe so. I don't know if I ever owned any Birthright, but it was one of those things that I'm definitely aware of it. Not anything that really struck my fancy. If I remember correctly, Birthright was all like it's human on human, and that's not fantasy enough for me. So I tended to pass on those kind of ideas. And a massive war game, I wasn't really interested in doing something like that. I mean, even in the current campaign I'm running, I put the idea out as a backdrop of a giant war, but I mean, I still wasn't having that going to be you're playing the war. Like the characters were going to be operating on the outskirts and whatnot.
Some someone please clip Ted saying I'm not into human on human. Carrie Miller wants to know: have you guys played old school Vampire the Masquerade and or Dark Ages? I think you did.
I made an awesome character for Vampire. I never got to play him, but I was still so excited at making that character. It's little morbid with his backstory, but it was definitely fun. I played more with werewolf or the were critters than I did
I
vampire.
I feel like when Vampire came out, I was like done for a while with my RPG exploration. Like it came out at a time when I'm like I pretty much play D&D and that's it. Like cuz prior to like our gaming group, I played a lot of different systems. We played tons of different things that was like, a session or two. Like we played all the different games from Wizards of the Coast. I mean, not Wizards of the Coast, that didn't exist yet. TSR, which was like Gamma World, Star Frontiers, Top Secret, and then there was other games like Boot Hill, Gangbusters, Marvel Phase Rip. So we played like tons of different things that we like would just play a couple sessions of and get a feel for it. There was Conan games. There was the Mayfair DC game, and then like I started playing with you and Ryan and Nate and that group and Steve, and like it would be years before we really ventured into anything else
I
that
mean,
wasn't D&D.
there was many different gaming locales, and it was all D&D until much later. I only experimented with Shadowrun, the original Star Wars, the D6 version, and maybe like one other thing that I played with some high school friends. You know, but when I started gaming with you, it was nothing but D&D until what 10, 15 years later, and you were like, no, we only play D&D here, and
I
eventually,
think there were some attempts to dabble, but they were never really successful.
well, we did attempt. My friend Jim wanted to run a World of Darkness game, and sadly, it did not go over well because he was inexperienced enough not to put his foot down and say, "Look, pick one game and I'll run that." But he allowed a mage, a vampire, and werewolves all to be in the same game, and those games really don't mix well. Um, and I think other than that one game, I mean, that was it. Everything else was just D&D, and then it wasn't until fourth edition came out that we were like, all right, let's try something else. And we played around with some Palladium, some masterminds, and then eventually we got into Nerdarchy, and then we became far more open and tried a lot of other stuff.
I guess the biggest problem in the earlier days, the way back days, is like not having enough GMs to run different games. So it's like, do you learn a new game or do you just keep playing the game you've been playing? Is what it ends up coming down to.
So I mean that is always the crux of it. I mean, nowadays, like you're surrounded by people who are willing, able, and competent to do the job, but now it's a matter of, do we have the time? Can we add another game to the schedule? And sometimes it's just not feasible with all the things that we do on camera and off, to add in another weekly or even monthly game. It's just not easy.
So Cody Sam's question: why do so many rules screw over reach weapons per raw, such as prone target being advantage with 5 foot, but disadvantage past that? So polearm users get shafted because in third edition they made polearms and reach weapons awesome, and they were so awesome that they had to nerf them in later editions.
I mean, if you don't like it by raw, feel free to, change the a prone target. You've got advantage with a melee weapon, and that, that solves it. I mean, that's pretty much what I've done, without even really thinking about it. I just changed it to within 5 feet to the melee, and yeah.
So Zareth Gaming, how do you deal with early game jitters when worrying about playing with friends and fear of messing up the game? Just start with about 3 shots Take it from there. Maybe smoke a spliff. Nah,
uh,
I you know what? I feel like pregame jitters, like for me anyway, it's just it's pregame, right? Once you start, they go away, and then you just gotta do it. And
yeah,
it's a game. Who cares if you mess it up?
I always go through that. It doesn't matter, what's going on. I I sit there. I'm like, all right, I don't know how this is going to go. As Dave says, lots of times like we're not heavy on the prep, so I've had times I'm like, look, you guys are either going to love this or you're going to hate me. Yeah, that's the way it's going to go. I don't see any middle ground with tonight's adventure, and I've come away and I get overly critical, and if something starts to go wrong, I can get flustered. Um, but there's, as Dave says, once you get started, the only thing you can do is move on. I mean, a bad night of playing D&D is still a pretty darn good night.
It's like sex and pizza. Even when it's bad, it's good. So, and also my thing, if someone criticizes or complains about the way you're running, that sounds like a volunteer to run the next session to me.
It's like, hey, look, you think you can do better? Here's the chair.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
you're up. Put your money where your mouth is.
I can't really, I could not give you a, let's say, worst five of tabletop sessions, because I really, sadly, I only have one that we were actually quite rude and arrogant to the DM.
We were jerks.
But other than that one, I mean, even when it was bad, we were still having fun. We were still enjoying ourselves. And I mean, even in that session, it was all right. We were a-holes to the GM. There's no two ways about it. But I mean, we still had fun that night. We just told the GM, I'm sorry, you're not welcome to be sitting in that chair anymore.
I think we did something similar when Psycho ran too. Like we didn't kick him out of the chair, but I think he did something. We said no, that's not how it works. So we just
See, I don't even remember what Psycho ran.
Oh well, it was he definitely ran some crazy stuff. So like Psycho was one of Ryan's friends, and he was like 5 foot, and he joined the Marines. And when he joined the Marines, like people were like, "Why are you joining the Marines?" Because there's whatever exam or your test you take when you join the military was like super, super high, and he was just kind of like crazy, a little bit on the crazy side. And when he would get excited, he'd have these like veins that would bulge in his forehead, almost like a cartoon character. He reminded me of like a cartoon character of like a Chihuahua. He was like Ren from Ren and Stimpy.
And in a lot of ways too, because he was so skinny.
Yeah, yeah. So it
so
is.
Elfbait. Well, one more. We'll take one more question because I find this one amusing.
Okay.
Elfbait says, "Have you ever had anyone come at you physically across the table?" So we've had violence threatened. We had a improperly executed chokehold.
Does a set of teeth count?
There was teeth that flew out of the table onto the battle mat. There's been a number of very comical stuff, but I don't think there's ever been like player to DM, I'm gonna kill you kind of attitude. It's usually been more player on player scenario. The headlock, the chokehold, the one player just did not hear correctly, and he took it the worst way possible. So he assumed that this was another dig on me. I'm gonna come after you. The one other incident where literal violence was threatened. The one player basically had like a charm person effect, and he made the person who got angry basically say an homage to the gods. And the player, not the character, the player was so anti-religion that he was offended that his character had to do something relating to the gods. And he's like, you ever do that again, I will kill you. And we knew he was serious.
Yeah, he was also a Marine recruiter. Although he's definitely not the scariest Marine I've seen. And it's
No,
not
no.
Psycho either. Because actually it was Psycho's Marine recruiter that like weaseled his way into our game. Um, but yeah, we've definitely had some things come up at the table over the last couple of decades or so. It's bound to happen. But it's that time. We'll be back next week. And until next time, stay
Stay
nerdy.
nerdy.